No, it's fucking garbage. The damage is low and most incantations lock you into a long animation. And before you say, oh, I beat the game with this build, yeah, I bet you did. You know how I know? Because I've also beaten Elden Ring with this build. It's definitely possible, but it sure as hell ain't viable. By the way, I didn't use any summons, because I ain't a fucking pussy. So, for those of you guys who are curious, here is my character, here are my stats and my equipment. Here is also my map and how I kind of progressed through Elden Ring. Before we begin, I do want to say I'm going to be using a lot of Elden Ring footage, so spoiler alert. Anyways, let's get started. What I'm talking about is that basically Elden Ring bosses have a common or unique playstyle that renders the build itself useless. Note the immune part does not mean immune to things like holy damage. Although a lot of endgame bosses like Gargoyles, Radagon, and the Elden Beast make holy damage utter garbage. Let me give you an example. Rennala. Rennala is a boss who uses sorceries, incantations, and summons to fight you. How in God's name are you supposed to use long-range incantations when this bitch is literally summoning a pack of 5 wolves and launching 20 different sorceries at you? After dying many times and making the painful trek back to the boss, it was obvious to me that I have to run away from the sorceries and hit her in the small windows. Something that doesn't really mesh well with animation locked incantations. So, you know what I did? I decided to fist her with my holy ciphers. The boss fight ended up flowing so much better. Elemer of Briar. This boss represents the Miyazaki fuck sandwich special. Small room with hyper aggressive boss. What do you think happens to a frail faith build put into the situation? He dies. Repeatedly. You might be thinking, well, just kite him. Well, I'm lucky to inform you that Miyazaki made this boss much more dangerous from a long range. His sword travels across the room, and I don't know if I'm crazy or not, but I think he attacks faster with his long range attacks. After getting up in his face, you notice he's actually much more passive when you're just having a fist fight. So I ended up fisting him to death as well. Next is the Lava Alligator. The one you can't fight on horseback. You might not think this one's too bad. He's slow, he's big, he's dumb. But let me put this into perspective. A majority of your offensive incantations are fire-based incantations. So what in God's name is fire going to do against a lava alligator? Now, some of you might have been lucky enough to visit Gronk to get some beast incantations, or you went to the capital to get some lightning incantation, or maybe even you found the Godskin prayer book that lets you have the Godslayer Fireball. That's great. But if you're going in a straight fucking line like I am, you will get your shit pushed in. Also, Crucible Tail does less damage than Catch Flame. Test it out, seriously. A good amount of these bosses just hard counter this build. Do you know how punching the Godskin Noble to death is possible? It's because he also went faith build. The only boss I found viable to use slow, bulky incantations on is Radagon. You literally go up to him, kneel, and then praise Satan. He will miss a lot of his physical combos, and then he will just die.
Hit me, see what happens. Now do it, hit me again and see what happens. Okay, wait, let me just eat this.
So this is something that comes awkward with FromSoft games. You have your main weapon in the left hand slot, your incantation seal on your right hand slot. Where does the parrying shield go? Parrying trivializes some bosses and encounters you have through Elden Ring. Take for example in the beginning area, the Crucible Knight. Parry, repose, rinse, repeat, and he's dead. Apparently you could do this with Marge as well, and it would be really helpful, especially when he goes all Pontiff Sullivan on you. I would argue that parrying is a strong part of the game that every player should know how to do. You may not do it, but it'd be better if you did. That goes back to what I was saying in the beginning. Where does the parrying shield go? Weapon with parry shield, but then you won't use your incantation seal. Weapon with incantation seal, but then there's no parry shield ready. Incantation seal with parry shield, you're going to riposte with a seal? Now, how people have solved this in the previous game is to parry and then switch out to a different weapon to riposte. However, I'm saying that in itself is a very awkward way to play. Imagine constantly doing that to Margarita, only for each riposte to do about 5 to 8% of his total health. The only time I've actually seen this used was during PvP matches. It's a bit weird to use. Speaking of weird, I was looking through my Steam account and only 0.4% of people have killed the Dragon Lord, which is crazy because this thing was really easy. Like, I died more to the path getting there than the actual boss.
Let's go!
The way a Faith Incantation build fights on horseback is throwing fireballs at the target enemy. Simple, right? I guess. Like, I'm sure all of you have tried using a weapon while on horseback. It was pretty clunky at first, but you find out it was a hit and run tactic. So where does that leave incantations? Well, because of the clunkiness, the most optimal way of ensuring your fireball hits is to stand perfectly still, look directly at the boss, and hope the boss doesn't move. Take for example the Glintstone Dragon. Sit there and throw fireballs, but then he moves. Also, you're too far away because fireballs have a drop-off point. Ah shit, your horse just died. Well, I guess you're fucked since the Glintstone Dragon has very large AoE. Similar to the Frost Dragon, it's easier to just go up to it, hit it with your weapon, my weapon being my fist, and just run away when the dragon looks like it's moving. So much simpler without having to worry about FP. By the way, these things also have high holy defense for some fucking reason. There are a lot of other bad points I could just go on and on about. Things like being animation locked or needing to spread out your stats more than something like a strength build. But probably the most important thing I wanted to highlight is that it's fucking boring to play. It's low damage, you die a lot, and most boss fights devolve into you throwing fireballs at it from halfway across the room. Near mid to end game, my build shifted from a Faith Incantation build to just a Fist build. I would use things like Blessing of the Erdtree, Barrier of Gold, and Golden Vow to buff my Fist build, just to make it stronger. And that was 100 times funner than using incantations to beat boss fights. I would say Godfried embodies this very well. This boss is underwhelming from afar, but if you fight him face to face, it becomes much more intense, and you realize this is probably what the developers intended this fight to be. Just a fucking brawl between you and the boss.
What's good?
Now, you may have noticed that all the bad points have to do with bosses. Yes, that is exactly what I'm getting at. For a new, intermediate, or even veteran players, their focus is on the bosses. Bosses are a very important part of FromSoft games. I'd probably say it's the main attraction. However, with this build, you will run into so many more walls than someone with a simple strength build will have. You're not going to hear a brand new player or even an intermediate player talk about how FromSoft's verticality design and interconnections is more present in Dark Souls 1 than in Elden Ring. Nor will you hear that despite Dark Souls 2 is the weakest one in the Dark Souls franchise, it is still much better than many AAA games out today. However, outside the boss scope, it is a great utility build for long journeys or dungeons. Lord Heal heals my HP about 80%. It's great if I'm out of flask. Force or Rejection is a fantastic incantation when you're fighting near spots where gravity can kill you, especially when endgame has enemies with shit tons of HP. With more memory slots, you can have mid-range combat, so playing like a pussy is completely doable. You don't need a bow if you got a fireball. So speaking of fireballs, the Godzilla Fireball is a great end-game incantation, useful for killing gargoyle after gargoyle after gargoyle. It's also okay with PvP, since you have the Catch Flame ability. This is a spell that's instantaneous and stuns other players. You can just spam it over and over. It's also slightly better than Dark Souls 3 Miracle Faith build, since they combine Pyromancy, Miracles, Hex or God-slaying incantations, and even Rock Earth incantations to help you out. You even start off with a Catch Flame incantation, which is a fantastic beginning ability. And you get the Holy Fist once you're able to visit the Round Table. The Holy Blade you can only get in the Fortified Manor in the capital, which is kind of near the end of the whole area, so that's like mid-game-ish. Basically, what I'm trying to say is, don't touch this build if you're looking for something fun to play. But if you're a veteran FromSoft player who's looking forward to a lot of pain, then go right ahead. I know I did, but then again, I'm a masochist. I got it! Right? No, I don't think it counted.